Terrarian in the Dungeon, Chapter 58, Fan Fiction, by Azazyel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. 6 hours. In the course of 6 hours, I had from getting my flag to the official start of Wargame I may or may not have completely cut down a chunk of the neighboring forest to the point Eina came screaming at me from the guild tent as the dozens of trees being felled to the ground obviously kept her from sleeping. But Eina's complaints didn't stop me from my valiant deforestation efforts, and soon enough I had enough wood, and I quickly built the shell into an ultra-large luxurious log cabin mansion with the back porch and area being encased in leaves/vines I took from the trees to let in natural light along with fresh air while I was working the smithy I made in the back area. So, it looked like the back area was just encased in a giant thin hedge, and like all my Terrarian stuff, no one without the right tools could break it. Finally, I made a sign saying, "Flag here," and put it beside the flag that was placed inside a locked see-through ice chest on the side of the house with the sign next to it, and then I performed the evilest thing ever. I took the large amount of ice I made by freezing a chunk of the river I passed by earlier to nerd pull/make a tower of slippery ice all the way up till I reached the very clouds and expanded the top while leaving an opening so people could actually climb up onto the platform. And what was at the top? Nothing at all, which was the evil bit, as right at the bottom of this tower of ice, they would have to scale somehow. I wrote on another sign that the key to the chest and thus getting the flag was at the top of the pillar. So, with my mansion built with all the functions, I would need to survive for the next 3 days. I began the more fun experience of using the smithy I created in the back to make all the luxurious decorations and furniture for the interior mansion, like a nice bed, tables, chairs, chandeliers for forever burning Terraria torches/candles, and of course the all-important toilet. No idea why Terraria had toilets of all different materials, and seriously why would I ever go through the damned effort to make a Terra toilet out of like 3 dozen other toilets. But eventually, with noon coming, I finally heard the grandfather clock I created loudly ding at the hour, and I knew that the wargame officially had started, and I grinned at how the gods and people were going to react to my treatment of this wargame. In the very gods' meeting room where many gods and goddesses joined to watch the beginning of the wargame, Seshet sat covering her face both in mortification at how Jake all but said, "Fuck the competition," to build a mansion, but she also covering her face to repress the hysteric giggles at the sight of Apollo's familia trying to scope out the mansion Jake obviously made to live within instead of taking over the old derelict castle he was offered to use to defend the flag. So, it can be said that your Jake has accomplished your great artistry when it comes to building, but is he going to be just relaxing in his home? Demeter asked Riley as she sat in their little divine trio that consisted of Seshet, Hestia, and herself. Seshet just chuckled Riley as she watched Jake literally take a rack of ribs out of his spatial storage and begin to smother it in sauce and seasonings and start grilling it, causing its delectable smell to spread much to Apollo adventurers' dismay as they only had light rations packed for the following 3 days. Jake is weird, but he isn't a bad guy. He just doesn't want to slaughter dummy Apollo's adventurers. Hestia explained, with Seshet rolling her eyes in ridicule as she would have preferred Jake taking a more hands-on approach in dealing with Apollo's wretches. And thus, for the next 10 minutes the gods watched Apollo's children running around like lemmings completely lost on what the hell to do until Daphne found the ice chest with the flag clearly within on the side of the mansion, and thus, they realized and understood what the weird-ass ice tower was for. How the hell are they going to scale a sheer tower made out of slippery ice? Loki cried out obnoxiously as she pointed dramatically at the screen, with several gods crying out in agreement about how it was cheating. But Freya of all people cleared her throat loudly, making the room silence themselves as the beautiful goddess rested her chin on her folded-over hands. Jake Barris is merely one member of Seshet's familia versus dozens. Granted, it's not a brave and wonderful battle that could be sung of in songs for generations. But in the end, what can we do to decry his method of success, as his only rules were that the flag needs to be in a visible place, and because it wasn't fair, we had to add he couldn't summon monsters he couldn't control. Freya eloquently spoke as she shrugged. In the end, he is taking the best way to win, as not only will this method not end up with him losing, but after Apollo's familia is banished from Orerio, its adventurers could join other familias, and thus he wouldn't have bad blood for beating those adventurers. As at the end of the day, most familias are many times better than being bound to a fool like you, Apollo. Freya spoke cheerfully, and to say the least, Apollo frowned with his face turning red, but he didn't dare to refute Freya. One of the Far Eastern gods then pointed out how the Apollo familia were trying to jury-rig together a scaffold to climb up to the top of the ice tower, and seeing how long it was going to take, Loki spoke. "Hey guys, let's get a spoiler and see what the hell is at the top of the tower, what do you all say?" A chorus of eyes of agreement drowned out the small number of people screeching for no spoilers and the general censuses of gods moving the vision off of Jake, who was relaxed in bed reading a book, to look atop the ice tower. At the sight atop the ice tower, the whole room. Not all of Ororio had a moment of collective silence as painted atop the flat surface of the platform of ice was a large bright red middle finger. The one who finally broke the room's awkward silence was Freya as she sighed, standing up. Well, I stand corrected. Jake is a shameless sadist who may drive whoever climbs atop the tower to jump off. Anyway, seeing as Jake is obviously going to make a mockery of the wargame by living in the lap of luxury in his. It seemed to gall Freya to continue as she spoke. Admittedly pleasant-looking home, but I will be leaving, as watching him read and eat isn't as entertaining as the thought of him laying Apollo's dogs low. Freya finished as she strode out of the meeting room with several gods and goddesses, shrugging and doing the same, following the goddess of beauty out of the meeting room. Now that Freya is gone, I have an announcement to make by the way. Seshet said proudly smiling with a mischievous light. My precious Jake Barris has broken Ace Wallenstein's leveling record over his knee at having only been an adventurer for 3 weeks. Seshet announced, and the room went silent for a moment before it was filled with screams of outrage, most prominently from Loki, who was about to follow the gods and goddesses leaving.